and welcome back to my channel. On this deep dive, we are talking about January 6th, the Capitol riots. And the first episode is the planning, what led up to it. And we are not going to be covering the politicians in this particular episode because I intend to, in my next episode, cover the tweets, news clips, and other things done by the politicians. And I just don't want to cover it in this one. I want to talk about the right-wing extremists that covered or the ones that actually attacked and the planning that went into it, because I watched it live on places like Parler, TikTok, Twitter, DonaldTrump.com, something or another. People were sending me bits and pieces from that. We watched them plan it live. We watched them talk about how they were going to do it. And then we watched the plans play out on TV. So, I do have notes. I don't really go off of a script that often, but this is so serious. I actually took notes this time and typed out my thoughts, which for anyone who knows my videos knows that's incredibly rare. So, let's go through the apps. Let's start with the worst offender that I was on, and that was Parler. A few months before the election even happened, I was watching things where people were talking on places like Parler about if Donald Trump, there's no way Donald Trump was going to lose, that they were the silent majority, and the only way that they could lose is if Joe Biden committed fraud. Just look at his rallies, just look at I kid you not, his number of Twitter followers. They actually equated his Twitter followers to how many people were going to vote for him. And they use that to perpetuate this giant myth that there was absolutely no way that Trump could lose. And then the election came, and as it got closer, they started perpetuating more ideas for fraud. They started saying that there were going to be millions of fraudulent votes and dead people voting. And these were things I was seeing before the election even took place. That if we had mail-in ballots, that it would be a bunch of dead people voting and a bunch of people voting 2 and 3 times. They would vote by mail, then they would go in person, and the Democrats would do everything they could to steal this election. So when the election came and the inevitable red mirage happened that we knew was coming, we knew the red mirage was coming, where it would look like Donald Trump was going to win, and then his lead would evaporate as the mail-in ballots were counted. They then took the stuff that they had set up and previously did, and they used that to get people. And what do I mean by that? I mean that shortly after he was declared the winner, one of the first posts I saw on Parler talked about how Biden stole this election and they were going to forcefully take it back if they had to, but there were so many things in place to keep it from happening, no one needed to worry. And they were like, the Supreme Court will overturn the election, yada, yada, yada. So we saw that. Supreme Court did not overturn the election. None of these 60-some-odd court cases that were played out gave them what they wanted. And I watched them start to get more angry, more vicious. And they started saying, well, wait until the Electoral College comes. And then when that did not work out for them, that is when it got truly scary on Parler. I saw people on Parler talking about dressing like Antifa. This was a Proud Boy leader talking about dressing like Antifa and blending in with the crowd so that they would think that it was Antifa. I saw people talking about how they could get guns into the city and how they were sharing bomb-making manuals openly on Parler, on things on how to make bombs, how to camouflage yourself. I saw one person talking about how if you drive in, no one's going to check your car, so just bring your ammunition in your car, pay for a paid parking spot, and then walk right on in. But they still had hope. So they were saying that Mike Pence would overturn the election. But when they realized that Mike Pence was not going to overturn the election, I watched on Parler as they turned against him and they talked about erecting gallows and hanging Mike Pence. And that's going to be important when we actually get into the day of the insurrection in another video. I watched them talk about how there was a whole post detailing what they wanted to do on Parler. And this post talked about how there would be a few people that would use a large crowd, 4,000 to 5,000 people, to penetrate the Capitol. They would use a mass amount of people because they knew that the Capitol Police couldn't keep up. They would use a mass amount of people to go in and overwhelm them, and they would use that distraction to go in and capture the worst offenders. And the worst offenders were Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, pretty much anyone they had a political grievance against, they were going to round up. And they openly discussed how many people they needed, how they would do it on this post on Parler. They planned it openly on Parler. Then you had apps like TikTok. I would be scrolling through TikTok and I would see people talking about just wait until January 6th. It's going to be wild. Wait until you see what we're going to do. And they recruited and they radicalized through these posts, through TikTok and through Parler. They also would use Donald Trump's own Twitter feed to do the same thing. There was this common theme throughout his Twitter. Donald Trump fought for us. We're going to fight for him. We're coming on January 6th. We're going to make sure that they do what we want. One particular poster, it didn't last very long, but it was pulled down, said that they were going to put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head and they would take out the leadership so that Donald Trump would automatically be the next president. I don't know how they thought that would work, but that was actually something someone posted underneath the thread on one of Donald Trump's tweets. We knew in advance. Those of us who watch right-wing extremists and who report on right-wing extremists, we knew and expected some form of violence. Me, I didn't expect it on the 6th. I actually expected it more on the 20th. But I watched what they planned what they planned to do. I watched them do it on Parler. I watched them do it on TikTok and Twitter. I was being sent screenshots, graphic screenshots of these plans from these like 8kun and 4chan, and I even think a Reddit thread at one point had some of it. And we can literally look at those, then look at what happened and see that there were main instigators behind this. That there were people that had been planning a violent insurrection and takeover of our government through social media. That is why there's been such a crackdown on social media, and I'm watching it happen again for March 4th. I want to make you aware, I'm watching people on TikTok talk about taking down our power grids, shutting off cities' food supplies, and starving out the liberals until they get what they want. This was pre-planned, pre-orchestrated, and set up by the leaders of our country. And I will get into that in our next deep dive when I talk about the politicians that led up to January 6th. And I will see you guys later.